Hello there, my name's Brandon and I make pictures out of tiny squares. And in this video I'm going to be putting together a small pixel art bakery, and then finishing it with some animation. The canvas size I'm using for this work is 240 by 240 pixels, which there's not really anything special about those exact dimensions other than the fact that I've done several pieces in this series now, and that's what I've always used. So for consistency, that sizing is just sort of inherited from my previous self in a way. To get started here, I'm laying down the main construction of the shop stand. And prior to starting this pixel work, I'd actually done a few quick rough sketches just to get some ideas flowing. For these sort of pieces where there's any kind of architectural or other design ideas to tackle, I find that a rough sketch can especially speed things up because I can iterate a bit faster when making just kind of this really scribbly sketch like that. And so when it comes time to place the pixels, there's already this blueprint in place that I can refer to throughout. You'll notice as well that I've already got a color palette set up for this work, rather than finding something along the way like I do sometimes. What I had done was I revisited an earlier piece of mine. This is a post office shop stand from a few years ago. And this one had kind of this yellowy golden palette that I thought might be a good basis for the bakery. And so I shifted the colors around until I found something new that I liked. And the idea here was to go with something that had a kind of a warmth to it, sort of like a sunrise or sunset-y sort of feel. The additional bit of inspiration for this piece, or rather I should say actually one of the main kind of creative driving forces for this piece, was that my friend Danny had written a piano piece inspired by the idea of a bakery located at a harbor. And we can hear his piano track in the background right now. We had got to chatting about this idea of a harbor bakery, something kind of cozy with a sci-fi aesthetic about it. And he went off and wrote some music, and I went off and started to craft this art. So really the heart of this piece is this collaboration of those two elements. He had finished the music ahead of time, so for me that served as a bit of additional inspiration while making the art. And as a bonus, Danny went and translated the song from piano into a chiptune arrangement. And we'll hear that later when we take a look at the finished artwork. Continuing on here, I'm trying to bring in some of that harbor imagery into this piece. So with the chimney here, I was topping it off with these metallic exhaust caps. And my idea was to ever so subtly try to make them resemble a lighthouse in a way. You know, some of the old-fashioned designs for this sort of thing aren't too far from that kind of look anyway, so it feels like an appropriate thing to stealth into it. And another harbor-y sort of detail was to cap off the roof with this anchor decoration, which obviously is perhaps a bit more on the nose into giving this that kind of sailor theme, but still a fun addition nonetheless. Seeing all these little decorations come together to support the concept is one of my favorite things about making a piece like this. As I mentioned, these shop fronts have been this long-term kind of ongoing series for me for quite a while now. It's actually maybe one of the more important factors in a way for what helped me improve at pixel art. Obviously, regular practice and attempting new challenges are really important as well. But I just mean with a piece like this, you're kind of forced to decorate this set, something that's themed. So you end up requiring all sorts of objects that you might not have thought to make otherwise. And in doing so, you get to play with that sort of puzzle aspect of pixel art, and you're constantly learning how to translate new objects into this style. So I guess that's sort of my impromptu advice for getting better at pixel art, is just like make a location or maybe a room and then fill it with stuff. Because making all those objects is some really great practice. And for me, beyond that, I just find it to be pretty fun as well. Alright, to bring everything together here, I'm putting in some animated elements around the piece. First off, I thought it'd be fun to see those little smokestacks animate with a cartoony kind of movement, like a squashing and stretching kind of bounciness. So what I'm doing is creating these individual frames, trying to preserve the overall volume of the shape, but just kind of rounding it down into itself and then stretching it out tall. And when we play it back, you can kind of see that elasticity in effect. Of course, these should also release a puff of smoke as well. Or I guess like kind of the delicious smell of freshly baked bread, I suppose. So I'm creating some puffy cloud shapes that grow and then shrink away. and the final ones in the sequence start to actually break up into a dithered checkerboard pattern to help them fade away even further. To support the Harbour motif, I thought it'd be fun to have some waves moving somewhere in the background. And normally when I do something like this, I would just scroll a static pattern across the screen, almost like it's a cheap effect in a stage play. But for this one, I thought I'd try to animate some cresting waves into it as well. Each of these shapes are spaced 24 pixels apart, and that's kind of the repeat point of the pattern. So when it's eventually scrolling, they'll kind of scroll across that exact distance to create that seamless loop. And finally, and maybe the most important, is actually to make some animations for the baker as well. And I wasn't sure of the exact sequence I wanted to create for this when I set out to do it. So what I started by doing is just making a few isolated movements, like them using a rolling pin and them checking the oven, putting something in the oven, that kind of thing. And then my plan was to just sort of glue everything together with some in-between poses if that was necessary. So with that all coming together, let's go ahead and take a look at the final piece with its own custom chiptune track, The Bakery on Harlow Street. Here we go. Alright, so there we have it. I found space up on the roof to add in those classic cats in there as well. And I also wanted to point out that with the smoke animation, I created a slight additional fading to it by also stepping the color from the white to the sort of light peachy tone, which is just kind of another solution to create a fade effect when using a limited palette like this. Once again, I want to thank Danny for providing the music for this piece, as well as coming up with the name too. You can check out his music channel, Longest Beat, including the piano and chiptune versions from this piece, and I'll leave links down below for both of those. We'll go ahead and close out with some CRT Time now set to the piano version. So thank you for watching, and take care and keep it square.